Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Minister Desigmar, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry not to be able to speak in proper German, so I will try to speak English at least. And you have the translation in German, and I think that most of you do understand English language. I'm very happy to be here, and I have the opportunity to be here with you today, a few days after these horrible events and these terrorist attacks, and thanks very much for your words and your support, because it's about speaking about Europe. Speaking about Germany and France, and speaking about exactly what these terrorists tried to kill. And indeed, when you look at the recent years, Europe has been struck by a series of crises. The financial crisis, the debt crisis, more recently the refugee crisis, and not to mention, obviously, the security crisis we face with these horrible attacks. And in the end, it all sums up to a multifaceted political crisis, because all these challenges put in question European solidarity at the end of the day. And all these crises have revealed one of the key weaknesses of the European projects regarding to me, which is, in some cases, even the root of the crisis, is a growing divergence between the member states. And this divergence process has deep roots. I don't want to revert on the past periods, but I think it's important to share in such a forum these convictions. And we expressed these convictions a few months ago with Sigmar in a common op-ed. But we have been victims of a twofold illusion in Europe and in Eurozone. First, we thought that a single currency would allow the same standards of living everywhere, from Munich to Athens, without any efforts. And second, that even though a few differences remained, European rules would settle things right after the financial crisis. And the divergence was clear in terms of unit labor costs, current account imbalances, private and public leverage, even before the crisis. And we did not pay enough attention to those macro and structural imbalances that were building up. And since its onset in 2008, the economic crisis has speeded up the divergence process. And even our answers to the crisis increased this divergence process, because we asked a few countries to reconverge in real terms without any solidarity. We asked them to over-consolidate at the same period of time to repair the past mistakes, but by creating new divergences. And it's also the case when you look at the labor markets, and especially when you compare our two economies between France and Germany, we diverge during the past decade, because you took a series of these very bold decisions 10 years ago. We didn't do the same. And when you look at the adaptability of the German labor market, when you look at the dynamic between 2002 and 2012, the divergences between our two economies increased like crazy. And the result is that when we experienced this crisis, we destroyed much more employment in our country. And when you look at the unemployment rate today, we are at 10%, 25% for young people, which is the result of this past mistake and the divergences. But my point is to say that these divergences has to be repaired by a series of domestic measures and reforms, what we are doing in our country and what we are implementing in France with a series of laws, and we will keep implementing this program to repair the economy and reconverge. But in the same time, we need more than that. And we need precisely to trigger a new dynamic of the Eurozone project. But the risk of separation is not only an economic one. It is deepened by the geopolitical and human crisis that we both face. And I think the past few months completely increased this risk of divergence that we denounced a few months ago. On the one hand, there is a refugee crisis. You are more concerned than France because you are welcoming far more refugees than us. Also because refugees are before all coming to your country where they know that the economic conditions are pretty good, where they hope to find a job and make a new life. And because, and I want to insist on this point, the German society has shown a very generous face in this crisis. I realize what it means for Germany in concrete terms. Finding accommodation, food, organizing training, teaching the language, giving up sport lessons for your kids and many other everyday life activities because you are welcoming refugees every day. And I am fully aware that every single person in Germany is involved. In France, the magnitude of what you are facing and what you are doing is widely underestimated. And I always try to make that clearer for my fellow countrymen. Solidarity starts with trust and mutual understanding. And this is why, right after our panel, I will visit a training center for refugees, because it's important to show and for our people in France to understand the magnitude of your efforts vis-à-vis the refugee crisis, and the fact that if you do it properly, if precisely you deliver all these efforts, it could be a chance for your economy, but you need solidarity for the rest of Europe. On the other hand, 2015 is the deadliest year for France, and we experience indeed at the beginning of this year these terrorist attacks at Charlie against journalists, against Jewish people, against policemen, and a few days ago at Le Bataclan and some other places in Stade de France, as you mentioned. And we have been struck by these two terrible terrorist attacks. More than 130 people died in Paris and Saint-Denis last week. Hundreds are wounded. Everyone is deeply concerned. And I do want to thank Sigmar Gabriel for his visit on Saturday, and it was extremely upsetting for a lot of people to see Sigmar, Place de la République, precisely to pay a tribute to these victims and show the solidarity of German people in such a situation. Because it is a long-term conflict that we are facing. These attacks have been mainly fomented by French and Belgian people. It means that the border between international and domestic threats has faded away. It means that we cannot say it is merely an external threat. And French people are well aware of the support you demonstrated indeed last week in your country, today again. And really, I want to thank the chance to thank you, all of you, for that, because it means a lot to know that you feel for us. But at the end of the day, we run the risk to see the divergence between our two countries widened again in such a situation. Germany feels that its European partners are not taking their part in the refugee crisis, and France thinks that Europe is not really aware of the threat and does not do enough to deal with it. That's a risk. We have a new divergence risk in this period of time. And I truly believe that to face this crisis, we should certainly not go different ways, but work together more than ever. Why? Because for the refugee crisis, for these terrorist attacks, it's all about Europe. And the solution is all about Europe and our ability to move forward. And to tackle these issues, solutions lies, in fact, in two couples, I would say. The first one is solidarity and responsibility. They are the basic ingredients of European democracy, and we should never forget we need them both at the same time. And it is a deep-rooted conviction that Zygmunt and myself share and that we try to push in this op-ed. We need to be more responsible and more united on the economic side to improve convergence between our economies. It means we need reforms. We need to strengthen the Eurozone because of monetary union, which does not seem non-reversible, is weak. And to strengthen this monetary union, we need stronger convergence in the euro area, which implies structural reform at the national level, and to be extremely consistent and to be extremely ambitious and on this side of the picture, which means we need a greater fiscal and social convergence by harmonizing the basis of corporate tax, for instance, that we need a better governance because intergovernmentalism has been necessary to handle the crisis, but it has failed to provide Europe with a common project, which means we need new institutions at the Eurozone level to build what is our common interest. That's why we do believe that a common budget at the Eurozone area, a common Euro Commissioner at the Eurozone area, a common democratic accountability at the Eurozone area are absolutely a necessity today to build this new phase, to articulate properly responsibility and solidarity at the Eurozone level and to accompany this convergence process. And I want to insist on the fact that for me the precedent condition of such a phase is to do the job in my country. Because we have to trigger, together with Germany, this new phase, but which means that we have to restore trust between all member states and to deliver the message and the evidence that we are reforming our economy to converge. And we are in the middle of the implementation of what I call the 5 R's process. First, sound public finances, and we are carrying out over 3 years this 50 billion cuts. Second, cost competitiveness program, and we are implementing the largest reduction in taxes and contributions and wages in our histories with 40 billion in 3 years, which is 2 GDP points in France. Third, non-cost competitiveness program, and we promote simplification for business, innovation for the economy, and investment for the future, especially with a strong articulation with your Industry 4.0. 4, goods and services market, and this is a core element of the law I am currently implementing and the law I just passed a few months ago. It opens up markets and regulated professions. It unlocks economic potential, and when you unlock these markets, it creates innovation, it creates more competitiveness, and it makes your society and your economy much more fair. And next month I will present an updated economic strategy whose main goal will be to reform the French economy to make it fully work with the digital revolution and to reduce the boundaries between insiders and outsiders. And in a nutshell, what we want is to allow the French people to seize the new opportunities of our economies. And the 5th arrow, obviously, it's about the labor market, where the perspective is to adopt a series of measures to make the French labor market much more German, I would say, and increase the adaptability, increase the flexibility of this market in order to provide more responsibility at the branch and the corporate level. And if we want to face this geopolitical challenge I mentioned at the same time, we also need a European approach. Because the migration issue and the terrorist issue both take roots out of Europe, and they are linked to the geopolitical challenges in the Middle East and, in a certain way, in Africa. And we need to build a common immigration policy. We need to strengthen our external borders. We need precisely to extend our common security. We need to facilitate the exchange of information. And the solution, in order to face this challenge, is not less Europe, which will be a temptation for some of our people. It is not to close national borders and to deal with our own issues. It would be an economic and a political disaster if we do so. The solution is more Europe, more cooperation. But cooperation should focus on the issues that matter to people. And today, this clearly includes migration and security. A concrete French-German initiative funding national and joint spending in these areas could certainly help, and Zingmar and myself will push forward these ideas to our Chancellor and President, because it could help Germany to deal with the arrival of refugees, and it could help France to deal with security matters. It could help Europe to show more solution, more solidarity and responsibility in a concrete, visible, and coherent manner. Responsibility and solidarity is only one of these two essential couples I mentioned, because the second one is obviously Germany and France. We, France and Germany, need to get the job done, do our part of reforms, take our share of risks, help you face the immigration issue, help us face the terrorist issue, which actually are common issues. And I do want to insist and conclude on this message. Today, the risk is even higher than yesterday. Yesterday, we had to face economic challenges, and it took time. We didn't completely deliver. We have to work hard. But now, we have a lot of new political, vital interests to be defended. And the main risk in our two countries is to have the pressure of our people to deal with these issues on our own and to diverge again and to say, no, the answer is a German one and the others are not able to take part of the burden or to help us. No, the answer is a French one because they are not able to help us to provide security to our people. In both cases, it would be a big mistake because the solution of our current issue is not the dislocation of what our fathers did in much harder times and what we did in the past. What we have to do, what we need, is to take action. We need it stronger, deeper, faster, and we need to do it together. Thanks very much.